What if the ones you trusted most hid a secret so dark it could tear your world apart? Dive into the complexities of trust, betrayal, and redemption. Subscribe now to explore more thought-provoking stories that will make you question everything. In the bustling historic neighborhood of Germantown, Philadelphia, a tragedy unfolds that will forever alter the lives of those involved. The McAllisters are a well-respected African-American family, deeply rooted in the community for generations. At the heart of the family is 65-year-old Harold Hal McAllister, a devout man who owns a beloved bookstore on a quaint, tree-lined street. Hal's Book Nook is more than just a store. It's a gathering place where locals share stories, exchange ideas, and find solace in the written word. Hal is known for his generosity, often giving books to children and hosting literary events that bring the community together. Hal's daughter Maria is the pride of his life. Maria worked tirelessly to become a successful teacher, and when she married the charismatic Jordan Davis, the entire neighborhood celebrated their union. Jordan, younger and with an infectious personality, was instantly loved by everyone. His warmth and charm made him a natural fit in the McAllister family, and he quickly formed a bond with Hal, who was delighted to have a son-in-law to confide in. For Jordan, who grew up without a father, Hal's presence was both comforting and grounding. But the dynamic between Hal and Jordan would grow into something far more complex and dangerous than a father-son bond. As Jordan spent more time with Hal, their friendship deepened. It became the kind of closeness that felt strangely intense, even for family. Jordan would stay late at the bookstore after closing hours, talking with Hal over a few glasses of wine. When Maria asked about it, Jordan assured her it was simply bonding time, a way for him to learn from Hal's wisdom and experience. For a while, Maria believed him, but she noticed things. The way they sometimes fell into uncomfortable silences, the awkward glances, and how Jordan seemed anxious when she mentioned her father in conversations. One night, Maria couldn't shake a nagging feeling. She had noticed Jordan acting strangely distant and secretive lately, and her intuition told her something was off. She decided to check his phone, something she'd never done before. She told herself it was just her imagination, that nothing would be there, that she was just being paranoid. But as she picked up his phone from the nightstand, she realized it was password protected. Maria hesitated, her heart pounding. She knew Jordan's passwords were usually something simple and related to their life together. She tried their anniversary date, but it didn't work. She then tried his birthday, but still no luck. Frustrated and growing more suspicious, she remembered a conversation they had about his first pet, a dog he loved so much named Flint. With a trembling hand, she typed in Flint 123, and to her surprise, the phone unlocked. As she scrolled through the messages, her worst fears were confirmed. There, amidst mundane texts and friendly exchanges, was a thread of messages from her father that made her heart race. At first, it was innocuous, a simple, "Are you free tonight?" But as she scrolled further, the words became charged with innuendo. Hal's texts were flirtatious, with suggestive emoticons that left no room for doubt. Maria's eyes widened as she read phrases that she couldn't believe had come from her father's phone. "I can't stop thinking about you," and "Let's keep this between us." The room seemed to spin as she realized what was unfolding. The man she loved, the father who raised her, they were having an affair. A wave of nausea swept over Maria as she tried to piece it together. The stolen glances, the hushed conversations. She felt as though she'd been blind to a secret that everyone else had known. She put down the phone, her hands trembling, heart pounding, and began to question everything she thought she knew about her marriage, her family, and even herself. When she confronted Jordan the following day, he immediately broke down, confessing to the affair with Hal. He tried to explain that it had started out innocently, a comforting shoulder, a friendship, and somehow had escalated into something neither of them could control. Maria listened, but her shock and anger grew with each word. She realized that every family dinner, every shared laugh had been a facade. Her husband and father had betrayed her in the most twisted way possible. Hal, when confronted by Maria, was cold and defensive. He didn't deny the relationship. Instead, he minimized her feelings, brushing her shock aside and telling her she'd never understand the bond he and Jordan shared. The words hit her like a slap. It wasn't just an affair, it was something deeper, something that went beyond betrayal and turned into an obsession that felt as though it could spiral out of control. Maria found herself consumed with the secret she couldn't tell anyone. How could she? Her father was a pillar of the community, a man respected by all, while her husband was a man people admired. How could she reveal the ugly truth without tearing down everything she and her family had built? Weeks passed, and the weight of the secret grew heavier. Maria began to feel paranoid, avoiding friends and family, fearing they'd somehow find out. Her nights were restless, haunted by dreams of betrayal and disgust. She felt her sanity slipping as she struggled to understand how the people closest to her could do this. With every passing day, her anger festered, turning into something dark and consuming. As for Hal and Jordan, they continued their secret meetings, emboldened by Maria's silence. They were careful, but the stolen moments grew riskier, as if they believed the thrill of secrecy could somehow erase the damage they'd inflicted. The community, still unaware, noticed subtle changes in Maria. She became withdrawn, her bright smile replaced by hollow eyes, her laughter a distant memory. Meanwhile, Jordan and Hal were more cautious, but still driven by their forbidden desire. The more they attempted to hide it, the stronger the pull between them became. The thrill of secrecy only added fuel to their reckless bond. Their obsession with each other took on a life of its own, and they started meeting in increasingly risky places, as if daring the world to catch them. One evening, as Maria returned home early from a school meeting, she heard hushed voices coming from the study. She stopped dead, recognizing both voices instantly. Her heart raced as she crept closer, pressing herself against the wall just outside the door. Through the thin crack, she saw them together. Her father, Hal, his hand resting intimately on Jordan's arm, speaking in a tone she'd never heard him use with anyone else. Jordan looked vulnerable, almost childlike, as he gazed at Hal with a look that spoke of both reverence and submission. As Maria watched, a painful truth dawned on her. Jordan isn't just her husband. He's under her father's influence in a way she can't fully comprehend. There's something twisted in the dynamic, something that sends a shiver down her spine. It's as if Hal holds a power over Jordan, one that goes beyond mere affection. For the first time, she questions whether her husband is a willing participant or a victim of her father's manipulation. But then she remembers Jordan's pleading confessions, his tearful apologies, and her sympathy vanishes, replaced by a burning rage. The realization that her own father would cross this line, would indulge in something so perverse, makes her stomach turn. She retreats back up the stairs, the sight seared into her mind, her rage simmering to a boil. That night, she decides to confront Jordan again, this time hoping to understand the extent of the affair. As he sleeps beside her, oblivious, she leans close and whispers, "How long?" He stirs, barely awake, and mumbles, "Too long." It's the only answer she needs. Unable to contain her anger, she grabs him, shaking him awake with a force that startles even her. He's wide-eyed with fear, but she's past caring. Her once soft voice turns harsh and accusatory as she demands answers. "Why him? Why my father?" she spits, her voice trembling with rage. "How could you betray me like this?" Jordan struggles to respond, his face twisted with guilt. He stammers, trying to defend himself, but every word only deepens Maria's fury. The fear in his eyes speaks volumes. He's terrified of her, but she suspects he's even more afraid of Hal. Despite his apologies, he never fully explains his reasons, leaving Maria to interpret his silence as something far darker. Desperate for someone to confide in, she decides to approach her closest friend, Keisha Johnson, a former college roommate who knows the McAllisters better than most. Keisha had always sensed something was off about Hal, though she'd never voiced it. When Maria breaks down and tells her everything, Keisha is stunned, struggling to process the gravity of her friend's betrayal. But her initial shock soon gives way to a dark sense of validation. She recalls Hal's controlling nature, his insistence on having a say in Maria's life, her relationships, always framing it as fatherly guidance. But in hindsight, it feels disturbingly possessive. Fueled by Keisha's support, Maria considers confronting her father once more, hoping he might express remorse or guilt. Instead, Hal is dismissive, even cruel. When she confronts him, he shows no shame, no regret, only a sense of entitlement to his bond with Jordan. He insists that she could never understand their connection, that Jordan is better off under his guidance than he ever was with her. As Hal speaks, Maria realizes that he feels no remorse. His words drip with a poisonous sense of righteousness, as if he believes he's done nothing wrong. In his mind, he's justified, and that sickening self-assurance is more than Maria can bear. She flees the house, nearly overcome by the weight of the betrayal. In the days that follow, Hal and Jordan's meetings grow bolder, almost flaunting their relationship. People in the neighborhood begin to take notice, casting suspicious glances and muttering to each other. Whispers start to spread. Speculation turns to gossip, and Maria's silence becomes a source of fascination. The rumors swirl around her, draping her in a web of shame and anger. On the day of the meeting, Maria arrives first, concealing herself nearby. Jordan shows up shortly after, looking around nervously. When Hal arrives, they're both confused, but as they begin to piece together that they've been set up, Maria steps out of the shadows, her eyes filled with vengeance. "What now?" she demands, her voice loud enough for the few passers-by to hear. Jordan tries to calm her, but she's beyond reason, her rage uncontainable. She begins to shout, airing their dirty secret in a voice laced with pain and betrayal. Hal and Jordan attempt to hush her, but Maria's words are like wildfire, sparking the curiosity of everyone within earshot. The confrontation quickly draws a small crowd, people craning their necks, straining to catch every detail as Maria describes the affair. The gasps and murmurs of disbelief ripple through the crowd. She spares nothing. Her words are brutal, each one designed to lay bare the horror of this betrayal. Hal's once sterling reputation crumbles in an instant, his face etched with a mixture of anger and fear as he realizes that there's no coming back from this. Humiliated and desperate, Hal turns on Jordan, his anger taking a violent turn. He accuses Jordan of seducing him, of manipulating him into the affair, hoping to preserve some shred of dignity in the eyes of his community. Jordan has a face of shock and betrayal, trying to defend himself, but his words fall on deaf ears. In the end, Hal's carefully constructed image shatters, revealing the darkness that had been hidden beneath for so long. As the crowd disperses, Maria watches as both Hal and Jordan walk away, their lives in ruins. She feels a hollow satisfaction, but the victory is bittersweet. The community now knows the truth, but the damage to her family is irreversible. The very people she thought she could trust have become strangers, twisted by secrets and lies that will haunt her forever. Yet as she stands there, surrounded by the whispers and stares of her neighbors, Maria realizes that in some twisted way she's free. The weight of the secret is gone, replaced by a cold, empty void. Jordan too becomes a pariah, his charm now seen as deception, his smile a mask. Friends who once admired him now avoid him, and he becomes a prisoner in his own home, fearing the wrath of the very people he had once felt connected to. Unable to escape the scrutiny of those around them, Hal and Jordan fall into a bitter cycle of blame. Their relationship, now tainted by regret and hostility, begins to unravel. They argue regularly, their conversations growing more intense and heated with each passing day. Maria, who has finally found some small measure of peace, senses the growing tension, but distances herself, refusing to allow either of them back into her life. One stormy night, the tension reaches a boiling point. Hal, driven to the edge by the collapse of his once pristine image, decides to confront Jordan for what he believes is the final time. He storms over to Jordan's small, secluded apartment on the outskirts of town, a place he himself had once helped Jordan find when he first married Maria. Now, it stands as a stark reminder of their broken lives. Jordan, sensing Hal's fury, tries to ignore the pounding on his door, hoping he'll go away. But Hal is relentless, yelling accusations through the door, demanding to be let in. Frustrated, Jordan finally opens the door, and the two stand face to face, the hatred between them palpable. "What do you want?" Jordan asks, his eyes filled with loathing. "Haven't you done enough?" Hal steps inside, his face twisted with anger. "You ruined me," he hisses. "You took everything from me, my family, my name, everything. And for what? A sick fling?" Jordan laughs bitterly. "You think you're the victim? You used me, Hal. You used me to live out some sick fantasy. And now that it's come back to haunt you, you want to pin the blame on me?" Their argument escalates, the words sharper and more painful than anything they've exchanged before. The truth, buried under layers of secrecy and shame, spills out in accusations, each one cutting deeper than the last. The storm outside mirrors the storm within, lightning flashing through the window as the argument reaches a fever pitch. Suddenly, Hal lunges at Jordan, his rage taking control. They grapple, pushing and shoving, their fists striking in a chaotic frenzy. Jordan, younger and stronger, manages to overpower Hal, pinning him against the wall. But in a moment of desperation, Hal reaches into his pocket and pulls out a pocket knife he carries, a relic from his youth that he'd kept more out of habit than necessity. Without thinking, he plunges it into Jordan's side. Jordan gasps, his eyes wide with shock and betrayal. He stumbles back, his hand instinctively pressing against the wound as blood begins to seep through his fingers. The realization of what he's done hits Hal like a tidal wave, and he drops the knife, backing away as Jordan collapses onto the floor. "Oh my God, what have I done?" Hal mutters, his voice shaking as he looks at his blood-stained hands. He watches in horror as Jordan struggles to breathe, his body trembling as he fights to stay conscious. For a brief moment, Hal considers calling for help, but fear paralyzes him, and he stumbles out of the apartment, leaving Jordan alone in his final moments. Hal returns to his own home, his mind racing as he tries to process the gravity of what he's done. But his guilt is overshadowed by a cold, creeping realization. There's no escaping this. The police will come, the neighbors will talk, and soon everyone will know the truth about the murder. Maria, who had been staying with Keisha Johnson to escape the overwhelming atmosphere at home, is immediately notified by the neighbors. The news, though shocking, was something Maria had feared in her darkest thoughts. She had always known that the volatile relationship between Hal and Jordan could lead to something catastrophic, but the reality of it still hits her like a tidal wave. She falls into a deep depression, haunted by the events that led to this moment. Hal's trial is swift and brutal. The prosecution paints a damning picture, portraying Hal as a man who manipulated and exploited his own family for his own twisted desires. They bring forth witnesses who speak of his controlling nature, his influence over Jordan, and the volatile relationship that ultimately ended in murder. Hal sits in the defendant's chair, his once proud demeanor shattered, his eyes hollow as he listens to every word. Jordan's family, who had once embraced Hal as a father figure, now look at him with contempt. Maria testifies against her own father, her voice steady but filled with pain as she recounts the events leading up to Jordan's death. She describes the betrayal, the anger, and the final confrontation that left her husband dead. Her testimony is the final blow sealing Hal's fate. In the end, Hal is found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. As he's led away in handcuffs, he catches a final glimpse of Maria, who stands in the courtroom watching him with a look of quiet resolve. For the first time, he sees the depth of the pain he's caused her, and a flicker of regret crosses his face. But it's too late. His life, his family, and his reputation are gone, destroyed by his own actions. In the end, the tragedy of Hal McAllister and Jordan Davis becomes a cautionary tale, a whispered reminder of the dangers of secrets, betrayal, and the lengths to which love and obsession can drive a person. As the months and seasons pass, the story of Hal and Jordan becomes a haunting legend in Germantown, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk within even the closest of families. The community, once tight-knit and supportive, is left fractured and wary, a lingering reminder of the destructive power of hidden truths and the irreparable damage they can cause. Maria finds solace in her teaching and community work, deciding to stay in Germantown and rebuild her life. She becomes a beacon of hope and resilience, helping others heal from their own traumas. Keisha remains a steadfast friend, supporting Maria through the trial and beyond, finding her own strength and purpose in the process. The bookstore, Hal's Book Nook, is repurposed as a community center, symbolizing healing and renewal. The community comes together to address the underlying issues, holding meetings and support groups to rebuild trust and foster a sense of unity. Jordan's family finds closure through therapy and support from the community, eventually forgiving Maria and understanding the complexity of the situation. They remain in touch with Maria, forming a bond of shared pain and healing. Hal, in prison, reflects on his actions and the consequences of his choices. He writes letters to Maria and Jordan's family, expressing his remorse and seeking forgiveness. Though he knows he can never undo the damage he's caused, he finds a measure of redemption in his reflections and the hope that his words can bring some healing to those he's hurt. In the end, the community of Germantown begins to heal, finding strength in their shared experiences and a renewed sense of purpose. The story of Hal and Jordan serves as a reminder of the power of truth, the importance of forgiveness, and the resilience of the human spirit.